when they were the ones being victimized. So this has far-reaching, deep ramifications. Any way you want to look at this, there's no way to spin this good if you hire the wrong person. It's just not possible.
And to that point, just quickly, we went through this in my wife's practice where the office manager several years ago, before Build My Team took this over, 22 felonies, Ken. That's what the embezzlement was, how that was handled by the Pennsylvania State Police, 22 felonies. Wow. So we've been through that. And that's, every dentist, every doc who's been embezzled from, you just shake your head. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, I want to allow this to happen. But again, I look back on the what we were doing at the time.
Hey everybody, I'm Ken Newhouse, and I'm going to welcome you to the Get Clients Now podcast, the show where high-growth consultants and professionals come to access the newest and most effective methods and systems for online marketing, advanced sales and persuasive communication strategies, and automated marketing funnels. And if you're wondering if the Get Clients Now podcast can help you get more high-value clients, enjoy more sales, build a massive tribe, and make more money, you're absolutely going to love this show.
Newhouse's work completely blows everything else that we've ever done with Google out of the water.
I have been looking for a way to grow my presence online, and what I've viewed from Newhouse's work was something that certainly is faster than anything I've seen before.
He says he's going to do something and he does it. He does it in the time frame that he says he's going to do it in. It's exciting when you talk about the results that you're going to get, and you can believe his word because he follows it up with action.
The Newhouse is direct, he's to the point, he tells you what's on his mind, and he backs his words up. From what I know now, from working with him, he's passionate about his work, and he backs it up 100%.
What I like best is you offer something that no one else has out there, which is a pretty comprehensive approach about marketing a system.
If somebody asks me, should they use Newhouse's team? Absolutely, because you're going to get the important information that you need very, very quickly.
On the internet, on the different marketing techniques, I've never experienced anything like this.
I would definitely recommend Ken Newhouse for someone who's serious about growing their business. I think that your results based on the numbers would at least double the sales in a very short time frame.
Hey everybody, Ken Newhouse here from kennewhouse.com, and I want to welcome you back to the Get Clients Now podcast, where the one-size-fits-all marketing model is dumb, the client-centric business model is king, and top business owners share strategies that have helped their brand gain acceptance, achieve significance, and win in the marketplace so you can build your tribe with certainty. I want to remind you that MailChimp is now supporting the Get Clients Now podcast. With MailChimp, you'll find all your marketing needs in one place. Bring your audience data, marketing channels, and insights together so you can reach your goals faster. With MailChimp, you can promote your business across email, social, landing pages, postcards, and more, all from a single platform. This is episode number 340, and our show today is the second episode in our two-part mini-series on how to hire top talent and build a better team. And my guest today is Dr. Mike Neal. Dr. Mike is the CEO and founder of Build My Team. And I actually decided to have Dr. Mike on the show after seeing the meteoric-like growth his company's been enjoying over the last 6 to 8 months. And that's because Dr. Mike and his team of software engineers have created an amazing digital platform you can use to attract, find, and hire top talent. And you do that using a fully automated process that guarantees not only the performance of your new hires, but guarantees that they will be a perfect fit for the culture you've created and want to promote in your business. Now, this past week, I read a new survey from CB Insights that says that there's almost a 1 in 4 chance that at least one member of your team will end up hurting your brand's reputation and stifling its growth due to a lack of, number 1, emotional intelligence, and number 2, relevant skills for the job. Now, if you're like me and if you're like my most successful clients and members, those statistics get your attention. Now, in this particular survey, CB Insights actually surveyed 1,156 consultants, professionals, and small business owners, and they found the top 5 reasons why businesses have been failing to grow in the sizzling economy that we've been in for the last 2 years. And the number 1 reason on the list, the number 1 reason businesses are failing to take advantage and reap the enormous financial benefits of this economy we've had over the last 24 months is due to hiring the wrong members for your team. And as they put it, having a mismatch of what they called quote-unquote people skills and skills necessary to perform the job were the primary culprits for those surveyed. Now, that can mean anything from hiring an undermotivated team member to individuals with lack of emotional intelligence, lack of people skills, to having the wrong skills for the particular job that you want to put them in. It can even mean that those team members weren't willing to get on the same page with the owner's vision, which actually happens more often than not. Listen, on every episode, I do my best to show you methods to get you clients so you can grow your business, become more profitable, and make more money. But as I said on the last episode, I can give you the exact methods to get you clients that I'm teaching and giving to my six-figure clients and members. And on many of these episodes, I actually do. But if you're not set up to hire and retain the best, most qualified people for your team, none of that is gonna matter. Listen, everybody knows that hiring top talent is critical to the success and profitability of your business, and hiring top talent doesn't have to mean paying the most money to the talent you hire. Now, if you want to hire the best, most dedicated, highest performing team members, you got a couple different methods you can deploy for attracting, finding, and hiring them. You've got the slow way, which in and of itself isn't always the wrong way to do this. I want to be clear on that. But then you've got the fast way, which is to utilize technology to help you. And that's just not my opinion. That's also the opinion of Seth Godin, and everybody knows who Seth Godin is. Listen to what he had to say at a recent conference that he gave.
You a microphone.
So the culture that I'm trying to change right now is my internal culture.
Yep.
And your friend Bernadette Joa changed my perspective on who we hire and why we hire them. The challenge that I'm struggling with is in that interview, I don't know how to get to the heart of that.
Right.
And then they're mine, whether they are culturally right or not. So I know you have really good tactics about, when you're submitting an application, put tricks in there that they have to get right. Do you have more tips like that to find the heart of the person that we're talking to?
So I'm going to go all the way back to the first question from tonight, which is, I think we have to go several steps up to answer this question. So what Chelsea's asking about is, if I get the internal culture right, it's clear that benefits are paid, but getting the internal culture right, how do I keep that working? Well, let's say, how many letterpress machines do you own still? 4. When you bought a letterpress machine, did you pick it in an hour? Or was there a lot of thought and process and detail and I need this machine? But we've already acknowledged that the people are more important than the letterpress machine, but you're spending less time on the people than you spent on the letterpress machine. When I started Yoyodyne, it took 7 people shoveling coal into a computer to send an email out every day to 1 million people. Now you can do that on MailChimp for $4. So the technology has given us all this leverage. So, I've been very lucky sometimes with the people I hire, but the one thing I can see is the times I'm right the most is when I hire people I've already worked with. Because now I'm not hiring someone who's good at interviewing, I'm hiring someone who's good at their job. And so I try to create processes where someone does a project for me for money, where someone works with me for a while. That the way you become a coach in the Alt MBA is you take the Alt MBA and we secretly spy on you the whole time. And we take the best people and say, you want to be a coach? And that model is going to cost you time and money. But you're not going to get as many clunkers if you can figure out how to invest in it.
Now, in today's episode, Dr. Mike's going to show you the 6-step method you can use to build an elite level team. 6 steps you can use to build a team that can help you accelerate brand acceptance, skyrocket marketplace significance, and help you build your tribe with certainty. Now, before we bring Dr. Mike in on the show, I want to share with you one more thing, and this is from a training that was recently done by Big Tony Robbins, and he's actually taken Dr. Mike's 6-step method and broken it down into 3 primary steps for hiring top talent. Here's what Big Tony has to say about why hiring top talent is critical to the success and profitability of your business and the big picture elements you want to deploy in the hiring process itself.
If you ask me, what about hiring? It's one of the most important things. Well, hiring is. And we've all heard the phrase that says, it's not the person you hire, it's the person you fail to fire that gets you in trouble. But I believe there's a 3-step process to go through to get ideal talent. There's more than this, but this fundamental process is how I look at things. First question you got to ask if you're hiring somebody is, can they do this job extremely well? If you're interviewing the person for the 3rd time, they can do the job. The second question you got to ask is more important, though, because at this stage, what you got to really know is, will they do the job extremely well long term? Everybody has a good job in the beginning. They're selling, they're coming for the interview, they're getting started, they're enthusiastic, it's all new. But will they continue to do that over the years is the more important question. How do you answer it? You answer it by really answering 2 questions. Number 1, what are the person's goals? And are their goals in alignment with the actual position or the job? And then the third question is it the right team fit? Because sometimes you can have just an amazing performer, but they piss everybody else off and they wreck your organization. So you got to have people that are aligned. What are their drives? Are they driven for significance? Are they driven to contribute? Are they driven to grow? Are they driven to just hang on to what they got and be certain? If you're not aligned within your organization with these needs, if the team fit isn't right, it doesn't matter what else happens. So when you go to hire, can they do the job? Probably, if you're interviewing them multiple times and you still like them. Will they do it long term? Are the goals aligned? Is their nature aligned? And team fit? Answer those 3 questions and you'll make 10 times better hires, and that's how you really grow an organization.
So there you go. So like I said, so like Seth Godin said, so like Tony Robbins said, listen, if you want to accelerate brand acceptance, if you want to skyrocket your marketplace significance, and if you want to build your tribe with certainty, one of the key elements to that is hiring top talent, and you've got to get that right the first time. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and welcome Dr. Neal in on the show, but let's do this. Let's run through his bio real quick, and then we'll bring him in on the show. Dr. Neal has created a hiring process that is guaranteed to be the most predictable and accurate way to hire, based on an ideal combination of mindset, personality, strengths, and attitude suited to the job description. With his filtering and testing process, Build My Team finds you ideal team members who are results-focused, accountable, quick learners, highly motivated, and highly cooperative. So with that, let's go ahead and welcome Dr. Mike in on the show. Okay, everybody, this is Ken Newhouse, and I've got our guest, Dr. Michael Neal from Build My Team. So, Dr. Mike, on behalf of myself and the members of the Get Clients Now Nation, I want to welcome you to the show. How are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic, Ken. Thank you, and thanks for having me.
It was definitely the honor. After you and I talked the first time, and I looked at some of the stuff you were doing, I was literally, and this doesn't happen often, happens quite often actually with the guests I have, but just in general, I was shocked. I was pleasantly surprised at what you had put together because as you and I had discussed, as it relates to hiring the right employees and all that's involved and, all the terrible things that happen when you make a hiring mistake, I put together a hiring system, which was just a conglomeration of bits and pieces of the work other people had done. And I didn't take any credit for it. I didn't sell it. I just gave it away because it helped people. But when I saw what you were doing, it was like the difference between, like a Matchbox little play car that you'd buy for $2 when you're a kid versus a car that's running at the Indy 500 or the Daytona 500. There's not really a comparison. We're going to get into that in just a bit, but if you could, obviously I've already covered your bio and the introduction, but if you could take a minute or two and just in your own words, give us your backstory if you could.
You bet. So I'm a practicing doc. My wife and I practice together. I see patients usually now just 3 to 4 days a month, and she sees folks the rest of the time. This whole company was born out of the massive frustration and just constant revolving door for hiring issues that we faced within the practice. We're located in a rural area, and a lot of experienced folks don't come in, which I think are similar to a lot of practices in America. And we just had one problem after another with people in every single level. So it was really reflective of our hiring systems. I think more accurately, we didn't have a system, and so we created one.
And that's the system we're going to talk about here in just a bit. And guys, I will tell you this. Yeah, I wasn't expecting it when we first talked, but Dr. Mike was kind enough to take me through kind of a faux presentation that he would take a potential client through. And it didn't take but a few minutes. And I was literally, I was picking my jaw because I was really, really impressed. I'm a technical guy, and the technical sophistication of this, not on the user end, it's easy for users to use, but on the actual functionality and the skeleton and the framework of this system is very, very sophisticated and super, super cool. But next question, Dr. Mike, I'm still impressed by that. I told a lot of people about it, and I'm looking forward to putting this. I initially asked you, I didn't know if you worked with dentists or not. You said you did, but this is something that I've got to get not only to my dental clients, but to everybody who listens to my show, because it's that important. But having said that, Is there, and I think this is something we did talk about as well, but is there a situation or a person that really impacted you? You know, you kind of touched on it a little bit just a second ago in the previous question, but was there one incident or one particular person that led you in the direction you are now where you're like, hey, listen, I got to fix this. This is the last time this can happen to me. It can't happen anymore. I'm going to fix it.
Yeah, twofold. My wife, essentially, amazing clinician, fantastic doctor, and of course, the more empathetic the person is, the further they should be kept away from hiring. Essentially, so she ended up bringing on folks that I would describe wounded puppies. Essentially, she wanted to nurse them back to health. She wanted to take care of them, and this is terrific. But you can't do that in a high volume healthcare environment. So the absolute critical point for me, the tipping point, I go into the front behind the reception desk, and I hear this beeping, and it's beep, beep, beep. I'm like, what the heck is going on? I thought a computer was on the fritz. I didn't know what was going on. Turns out one of our technicians was facing the corner, just sitting there. You know what she was doing?
Facebook.
Charging her ankle bracelet.
Charging her ankle bracelet.
She was on work release. She was.
Oh, okay. So I'm thinking just like some sort of advanced jewelry or some sort of, kid thing that I don't know anything about as a dad. And this is someone who's being monitored by the police.
Yes.
Wow.
Yep. She got tied up in some stuff that had absolutely nothing to do with work. And the practice, I can go on and on. She was charging her ankle bracelet. I stood there, I was dumbfounded, and I just thought, this is it. I'm going to figure this out, do an incredibly deep dive into how amazing companies hire their people, and we have to turn this around because I can't continue with this. I just absolutely can't. And the backstory behind that is just simply, my wife and I got to the point where it was so awful at home that we almost got divorced over this. It was really critical. And if anybody out there listening is a husband-wife duo within healthcare, they're nodding their head right now thinking, yep, been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
I'll take it a step further because not only did I have my wife working in the office with me, I had my sister in the office.
Oh boy.
As well. One sister at who was my office manager, and my other sister was one of my associate doctors. So think about the tension between three women who they get along wonderfully out of work. But I just that's one of the reasons I swore I never would work with family members again because it was my practice. And the thing with you and your wife is different because it's a shared practice. But still, I'm the doctor. I should be in charge, and so everybody has an opinion, and it's not like boss and employee. It's like, hey, I'm your wife, or hey, I'm your sister, or hey, I'm your other sister, and I'm a doctor too.
Yeah.
So that was just that was difficult. So what I want to do now, obviously, I want to just kind of dive in. And by the way, I want to say this very quickly, just for your benefit and for a lot of dentists. I think the story you have, Dr. Mike, we just did a series on stories and storytelling for business. But having said that, you have a great story that I think will resonate with dentists when you talk about the gal with the ankle bracelet. And here's why, because a lot of dentists, unfortunately, I don't think I've ever met a dentist who wasn't super, super smart. But I think a lot of these people, like you mentioned, are empathetic towards the people they hire. And one of their biggest problems is they get ripped off. There's a lot of embezzlement that happens in dental offices, even more so than happened with respect to me in the chiropractic offices that I had. But I think that story will resonate with them. Number one, it's true. Number two, because it's one of their biggest sources of consternation and actually monetary loss in practice. So definitely want to share that story. What I want to do now, it's a little bit of a different approach than I normally take, is that I want to actually, as we move in and talk about all the problems, and there are so many, I want to talk about the big ones that occur when you hire the wrong person. The costs associated, just so many different things. So I want to go through kind of like a word game with you, kind of a rapid fire word game. So I'll give you a word or a phrase, and then I just want your gut visceral response. Take a minute or two to answer it, or, as long as you need, to to give a complete answer, but I did a lot of reading and research on this over the last couple weeks, and I'm shocked. So if I've got a stat that's been updated, please feel free to update that. But if you're ready,
fire away.
Let's roll. Here we go. Okay, so as it relates to the cost of a bad hire, here's the two words that I want to say. Productivity costs. What comes to mind when you hire the wrong person?
Mediocrity, or even worse is somebody who's caustic to the environment. So I say on the mediocrity side of things, let's say you bring somebody in who's great at an interview, they do the minimum. Have you ever seen a practice get rid of an employee because they're mediocre? It happens so rarely. They do the minimum. They're very, very difficult to get rid of. And what was the second part of that?
Well, just the productivity cost. So let me give you an example. I don't think I set this up correctly. So if I were to say productivity costs, if somebody were to ask me this as it relates to a bad hire, well, productivity cost is number one. I'm not getting the productivity out of an employee who's qualified to do the job, both either if it's a technical qualification or if it's a character qualification. You know, there are people who are super, super smart, who do really good work, but they're lazy. You know, one of my biggest pet peeves in working with dental offices for the longest time, and that's why I really narrowed down the qualifications of who I would allow to be a client of mine, was that the staff many times would become upset at the idea of getting busier. You know, and I would hear things like, well, if we're going to see more patients and he's going to make more money or she's going to make more money, I better get paid more money. Or they got mad because I would say, hey, listen, you're on the clock. You shouldn't be on Facebook right now. If it's for work, you know, if it's a strategic Facebook post for work, that's great. But when you're sitting there and things are backing up because you're goofing off on Snapchat or Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is, that's not cool. And see, they didn't like that. They didn't like the fact that they were being asked to work. Go figure. You're being paid, and yet you're being upset over the fact that someone's asking you to actually work instead of rip the doctor off that you're working for. So that would be how this little game is going to work. So as it relates to the cost, cost could be financial, could be lost productivity, whatever it is. So what about the financial cost of hiring a bad person, the wrong person?
Right. So let's say you figure it out right away. And right away in healthcare is going to be maybe 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks. You're looking at, for an hourly wage person, you're looking at somewhere in the realm of $10,000 to $15,000. If you can bring them on and immediately dismiss them within 2 weeks or so, you're still looking at around $5,000, maybe $7,000. And that comes from the cost of bringing them on, all the research to get them, all of the lost time, the training. And then what I really rarely see is a practice that turns around and says, boy, look at the opportunity cost of that person being dismissed. So on the dentistry side of things, your focus was swayed to bringing this person on. That means you're not spending time growing the practice. You're not spending time on all of the additional learnings. Maybe it's reading a book that's outside of dentistry that tells you all about different ways to grow your practice. That's what you're not doing when you're trying not to drown with the hiring problems.
Yeah, and this could actually relate, this same process could relate to a medical practice or a chiropractic practice. And then for everyone who listens who, let's say you're a consultant, because I have a lot of consultants who listen, and actually a good portion of my overall client base are clients. They're individuals. They're solopreneurs, if you will. With respect to them, they don't have employees, but these same principles will apply as it relates to the vendors that you hire. And so Dr. Mike's system isn't set up to like vet vendors, but all these same principles apply as far as you losing productivity and just bad morale with respect to, you hire the wrong vendor, you're going to upset a lot of your clients or your customers or whatever. And so all these principles are applicable for virtually every type of business you can imagine. What about employee morale? What's the cost of as it relates to employee morale when it comes to hiring a bad person, the wrong person?
Absolutely. So rockstar team members can't stand mediocrity. They can't stand anybody who's not pulling their weight, not even close. They're capable of 2 to 3 times the productivity of we'll call it a mediocre type employee. And we've all seen this. The question becomes, how do you get more of the rock stars? And the number one thing we see is that rock stars want to work with more people like themselves. They don't want to work with the mediocre folks, the average folks. There's a term I heard a long time ago, clock punchers. I just love it. Go to work, punch the clock, keep the brain on a low idle, and then go home, that type of thing. They really don't want anything like that. And so unintentionally, by facilitating folks who aren't in the rock star category type thing, it makes it more and more difficult to bring those types of folks in.
Yeah, that reminds me of, I mentioned my sister, Robin, was my office manager, and she was like my head office manager over all of the different offices that I had. And, she came to me a couple different times, I remember, and, eventually it led to her leaving my employment. Was a decision we both made. But she's like, hey, listen, you've got to hire the people you're hiring to, in a supportive role to me, are not getting their work done, and it's affecting my ability to get my other work done because I'm having to go back and do their work. And so, number one, not only is it frustrating to me, but because I'm not able to put my heart and soul into the really, really important work that I'm supposed to be doing, but now I have to go back and clean up their mess, and I'm constantly having to talk to these people. They're giving me attitude or they're making excuses, and it's just screwing up my whole mindset. So I can definitely understand. And that's really what was the genesis for my, at the time, which was, in my estimation, a really good idea to put together this quote unquote hiring system. But now that I've seen your system, if I had employees, I would never, ever do it any other way. And we're going to get to that in just a bit here. But let me give you a couple more of these. Sure. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
Here's a quotation, Grunert and Whitaker. The culture of any organization is shaped by the worst behavior the leader is willing to tolerate. So I have that on a wall in front of my desk. On the days when you might think, maybe I'm going to push this decision, kick it down the road a little bit. What you're unintentionally doing is you're saying to the rest of your team that the behavior that they want to get rid of is now tolerable because the boss didn't say it's intolerable. It's such a very simple and eloquent quote from their side of things, but really the worst behavior the leader is willing to tolerate. I would ask the listeners to kind of ponder that a little bit and think about that in a practicing scenario. You have to draw the line, and anytime somebody goes over the line, if you're not if you're not putting a stop to that or having your team put a stop to that, you are by definition tolerating it.
And that's also, and you bring up a great point, that is a direct reflection on you. Every behavior of your staff really is your behavior, whether it's online or off. And so if you've got an employee who's slacking, is a direct reflection on you. And so people eventually are going to start to see you as a slacker. If you have a dishonest employee, eventually that's going to reflect on you. And you're going to be seen. Here's a real quick example. There have been several instances, and I mentioned these earlier, where dentists have actually, great dentists, ethical people, really good people, just in general, just good people that really love their patients. They're really passionate about dentistry. And I've seen this in a couple other, business settings. And they end up having somebody steal money from them. Or in one other case, the person actually committed a crime, but they were employed at this person's business. Well, that reflected directly on the business owner and made them look kind of shady, even though they had nothing to do with this and it was outside of their business. And then in the other instances where the dentists were being ripped off of hundreds of thousands of dollars, this caused people in their community to really question their intellect. Are these people really smart enough? Are they on top enough? Are they aware enough? If they aren't aware enough on top enough of the situation in their own practice to know that somebody's stealing money from them, which is kind of unfair, I will admit. But still, they lost patients because patients really had lost trust in them when they were the ones being victimized. So this has far-reaching, deep ramifications. Any way you want to look at this, there's no way to spin this good if you hire the wrong person. It's just not possible.
And to that point, just quickly, we went through this in my wife's practice where the office manager several years ago, before Build My Team took this over, 22 felonies, Ken. That's what the embezzlement was, how that was handled by the Pennsylvania State Police, 22 felonies. Wow. So we've been through that. And that's, every dentist, every doc who's been embezzled from, you just shake your head. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, I want to allow this to happen. But again, I look back on the what we were doing at the time, and the toleration component of it was in play.
Yeah, other than being embezzled from, I'll just quickly say this: the straw for me that broke the camel's back. I had a gal that worked for me in my own office. So I had multiple locations, but the office where I primarily worked 4 days a week, saw my own patients there. Her name was Bridget. She had a high school education, but she was literally one of the best office managers I ever had because patients loved her. She did a great job. And the fact that she brought me referrals, like when she was out and about, and she made an enormous amount of money. She was making almost $70,000 a year with a high school education because of all the bonus money she was making. But she came to me on a Friday and said, my best friend from high school is getting married. And this is back in West Virginia. And I'm going to the wedding on Monday. I said, wait a minute, we just spent $10,000 or $12,000 on a promotional campaign. We're going to be slammed with new patients next week. You can't leave. I don't have anyone to cover. You're just now coming. She goes, I just found out about it. I said, you can't leave. She said, I'm going. I said, if you leave, you're not going to have a job. So over the weekend, I figured she wouldn't go. But over the weekend, she came in. Her sister was a patient of mine. She deleted all the files in the computer system that her sister had. She stole a whole bunch of money from me and stole all of my supplements because we had a ton of, $5,000, $6,000 worth of supplements as well. And this was 20 years ago. But for me, that was the straw that broke the camel's back when it came to hiring the right people. Okay, so what about these two? I'm going to give you a couple more, and then we'll dig into a last couple questions, and then we're going to talk about what it is that you've got as a solution. Okay, how about this? When you hire the wrong person, how does that affect the cultural balance in your company?
If somebody's absolutely terrible, like we were talking about the mediocre or worse versus a rock star, it's caustic. If it gets worse than that, I would describe it as carcinogenic. Pretty strong word, but that's how the team members feel. They go from loving showing up at work or having a great time at work to trying to run the day based on avoidance of the person that's in question. Healthcare is delivered by a team. Whether the doc thinks that they're the be-all, end-all of the practice, we all know that it's the team that really does the delivery. The doc's the figurehead or does the treatment in so many different ways. But when you have somebody like that on board, I've seen it. It's avoidance. So you talk about productivity. Well, what happens when you avoid productivity?
It's a downhill spiral from there. What about brand reputation? Hire the wrong person. Yeah.
Yeah. And thankfully, this in a lot of ways is heavily reliant upon the doctor and the care that's provided. But on the team side of things, Google reviews, first and foremost, you have somebody who is more of that caustic presence that might think that the patient is really secondary because they're God's gift to the practice. You're going to see it. You just wait. The patient walks out the door, and before they get to the car, they're banging out the Google review.
Yeah,
that's where the 1 stars come from. Nobody gets 1-star care in healthcare. It's extremely rare. That's when the emotional component is attached to the review, and they want you to suffer. They want to take you to the cleaners because somebody in your practice made them emotionally upset, and now they're coming back.
Now, listen, you didn't read my questions, but I'm going to jump ahead to one of my questions that I have because this actually dovetails perfectly, but I've seen it in multiple instances. I've worked with a lot of chiropractors and dentists. Speaking of doctors, I've only worked with a handful of medical doctors over the last 25 years, but I have worked with a lot of dentists and chiropractors. And one of the things that I've seen that literally is horrifying to me deals when you hire the wrong person, you end up keeping that person too long. And then when you ultimately get to the point of firing that person, the damage they do to your reputation online, they create all these fake email addresses, write all these negative fake reviews is astonishing. And so making sure you hire the right person and build a firewall against hiring the wrong person. The emotional devastation when you have a doctor who is way above board, who does phenomenal work, who really has has great reviews on Google or any other, like ZocDoc or wherever. And then they end up getting, 3 or 4 1-star reviews where they're just so over the top that they're almost they're incredulous. But the fact is that still stains your reputation. And in a lot of instances, you can't get that stuff removed. There's a place called the Ripoff Report. I saw one doctor literally get devastated. An ex-employee wrote something on the Ripoff Report. The ripoffreport.com wanted like 50 grand to remove that. It's like extortion. I don't know if they're still around today. That was many years ago. Yeah. And they have so many people that would use that website that it would rank like, it is disgusting. It would rank at the top. I don't see how somebody didn't snuff those people out, but I don't even know if they were in the United States, but literally it was an extortion ring. They ranked so high because so many people use their website that if they wrote something negative about you, it was the number one Google search for you no matter what, and almost impossible to get rid of unless you paid them enormous amounts of money. So I'm not sure if that's still around today, but I just know that was a big deal and it was devastating to the people that it happened to. And it was from an employee who had been fired. Okay, so let's do this. Let's move into my next question. I'm going to cover a couple different stats. Then I want to talk about the solutions you've got. So I'm going to read this because it's actually a little bit of a lengthy question. It says, according to the U.S. Department of Labor, the price of a bad hire is at least 30% of the employee's first year earnings. And what I'd like you to do, I want you to dive into this, but based on my experience, I want you to also address another huge financial loss from hiring the wrong person, a bad hire. And you touched on this earlier. It's almost like you read my questions, like you read my mind, but the cost of lost opportunity, which for me was like, that was the one that really got me the most. How much could I have done had I not hired this moron or this thief or this person who just really a good person, a good heart, just not qualified to do the work? Because I felt sorry. The husband had been friends of ours from church. Husband had been laid off. He was an engineer. And I hired this gal, sweet lady, and she just couldn't do the job. Honest as the day is long, sweet. I mean, nothing bad other than she just couldn't do the work. She worked at a snail's pace, and I was going to fire her, and which was very difficult. And they begged me to keep her on because of the fact that, he didn't have a job. And they were friends of mine from church, and I kept her on for 6 months, and it cost me an enormous amount of money. When I say friends, they were good acquaintances. They weren't like my best friends. If it was that would be different. But I just think about how much money I lost as a result of her just not being able to do the work.
Yeah, and I would approach that a little bit differently. She was brought on because of the personality that she had, super sweet, she said, and she was also brought on because other folks were strongly encouraging you / twisting your arm. Our philosophy at the company, at Build My Team, is to approach it differently. Everybody, including that woman, has her own strengths. So we have to find out what that person's strengths are, what she wakes up in the morning to, she just does without even thinking twice, thinks it's not special or anything like that. Let's find out what those are. And then let's get her a position where somebody's going to compensate her for doing what she thinks is completely and utterly normal. She doesn't get why it's special. That's the foundational approach of how Build My Team is created. So that woman, instead of costing you all of the opportunity for the 6 months, could have been moved into a different position, the proverbial Walmart greeter perhaps, where she just loved being surrounded by people, loved talking all day long, etc., where she didn't have to get anything done. That would be the focus for her position. She would be incredibly happy, be grateful that somebody would actually pay her to do something so easy, etc., etc. And then in your particular case, that gets you out of having to be in that type of position, right? So our focus is on the strengths, as I said, and let's get back to the opportunity cost. The story I like to tell is go for a swim, hop into the pool wearing winter boots. Can you do it? Can you swim while wearing winter boots?
I would eventually fatigue out because my arms would not carry me.
Right, exactly. So throw some exercise weights on your arms while you're doing it too. Are you going to be able to swim? The answer is yes. At what point do you give up?
You're sounding, Mike, Dr. Mike, you sound like my ex-wife here. Let's not kill me off before the end of the show.
Oh, exactly. But that's the thing. You can get rid of all of that stuff. It's a ridiculous example. But when you're in the practice, when you have folks like that, We see it all the time. Practices put up with this. So you're never able to do anything other than try and just tread water. We would switch the approach to say, stop with the proverbial firefighting. Let's concentrate on some fire prevention for even a day. We get the fire prevention methods in place, and now all of a sudden you can get out of this big mess that you're in. And that's what we've been doing with clients.
Nice. One other scenario that I want to bring up that I didn't bring up that's really, I think, more apropos, more relative to the dental practice is that dentists, for the most part, and I never understood this until Howard Fran, he's the CEO of Dental Town, was on my show, and he just said, hey, here's the deal. A lot of dentists just want to do dentistry, and they leave all of the business stuff, the growth of the practice, things like that. They leave a lot of that up to their office manager. And so there are a lot of times when you have an office manager who has their ideas of how successful or profitable or busy or the type of patients they want to see or not. And so in my estimation, that would be like my worst nightmare if I had someone who behind my back was subverting my goals for in place of their own. And so is your system, is there a way to like filter those kind of people out? I'm sure there is. There has to be.
Yeah. So the core principle there is goal alignment, and that's absolutely critical. If your goals are 50% of what their goals are, all you're going to do is have all kinds of problems trying to get anywhere. If your goals are virtually and completely aligned, now you're both moving forward in essentially the same direction as fast as you can possibly go. So the way that we start with that is mindset. A lot of hiring focuses around personality. You hire the smile, you train the skill, that type of thing. We look at that as about midway through the assessment process. Mindset's number one. If a person doesn't have the right mindset for a healthcare practice, whether it be dentistry, chiropractic, eye care, it doesn't matter. What's going to happen is you'll bring them on, everything appears to be fantastic, you start plugging all the money in with training, etc., and then they just up and leave, or worse yet, you want them to leave, but it's difficult to get them to do so. That's why we start with the mindset first.
Yeah, that's the thing that I just really liked about your system is that you've got this firewall set up in the process so that if people can't make it through this initial filtration system, the system, essentially removes them. They're done, and so there's no additional expense, or you're not paying for all these other evaluations to take place because it nips them in the bud. Before, it pulls them up by the roots, so to speak, before they're even allowed to start to sprout or get a good solid foundation. Kind of walk us through the process. So let's say that let's, for the sake of example, and I know your system is pretty much set up for healthcare professionals, but let's say that I've got a practice, and guys, again, if you're not a healthcare professional, these principles are still going to apply when you hire vendors. And even I'll take it so far as to say this applies to you, whether or not you're willing to accept certain kinds of clients or customers into your business. Not only did I filter all the employees that I hired, and I highly suggest you do that now utilizing Dr. Mike's system, but you should be filtering the type of new clients or customers, patients that you allow into your practice, because if a negative employee can be toxic, so can the people that you bring into your business to serve. I mean, we've all got the quote unquote, that one person, Mary, that when we see her on the schedule, it's like, not her, not today. Not today. Today of all days, I don't want to deal with Mary. And so even if you don't have a medical practice or a dental practice or chiropractic practice, you're not is it ophthalmologist or optometrist? I'm not sure. Okay. It doesn't matter. Whichever one you have, if you're not one of those type of if you're not a healthcare provider, you still can apply these same principles to the people that work with you and also to the people that you accept into your business as a new client or customer. And so with respect to that, walk us through the process of how this process works.
Sure. First of all, it's not limited to healthcare. We've hired folks from all kinds of industries.
My bad.
The craziest position we've hired at this point is a locksmith. 100% nothing to do with healthcare.
You told me that. I apologize. I forgot. You're right.
Yeah. So the first thing we start off as I said, is the mindset. Wait.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to interrupt. Tell the locksmith story because that was golden. I got to hear that again.
This poor fellow, he comes from corporate America. He decides he wants to own a business. You know, God bless him. It's the American dream. So he buys a locksmith franchise in a state that the state required a master locksmith license for the business to open the doors. Now, not that it had doors, but to get the mobile locksmith van out, etc. So he was on the hook for a locksmith franchise fee, all of the expenses for the business, and could not legally bring in $1 of revenue until he hired a master locksmith. Now, you'd think that was something that would be upstream a little bit in the decision-making process, but he didn't, and this guy's a fantastic person, he didn't realize that it would be so incredibly difficult to find a locksmith. We found one for him. He's up and running.
Which is not healthcare, which is awesome. So I apologize. I had completely forgotten about that. It's been a little bit of time since we talked, but anyway.
This is on healthcare by far. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So go ahead and run with it. Tell us about the process of how this all this works.
Sure. So this was created and modeled after how some companies, a little outfit called the Four Seasons and another one called Ritz-Carlton, how they model their hiring process. They turn the whole thing upside down. So they're not looking for people who can do the job. The immediate approach is to look for everybody who can't do the job and remove them. So to give you an example, long ago, Four Seasons in Maui, they are hiring a bartender. This is a bartender who works at one of their pool bars. They had 3,800 applications for this particular position, for a bartender position. So they can't go through and look for anybody who can do the job. Functionally, every single one of them that applied could. The way that they approach this is to use assessments to go through and remove all the people who can't. So we're looking in Build My Team's case, we're looking for mindset that matches healthcare. The people who don't have that exit the process. The next thing that we look for is their cognitive capability. We have, for each of the positions that we're brought in for, there's a benchmark of how intelligent a person should be. And so they're measured against that particular benchmark. On the doctor, let's say the provider side of things, obviously looking for really intelligent people. For other positions, maybe not quite as much, of course. And then, so you got mindset and you have a really intelligent person. You hit the nail on the head earlier on in the discussion. Next thing we're measuring is motivation, because otherwise you get somebody who's got a great mindset, is really intelligent and lazy. What do you do with lazy, right?
That happens more and more today. Absolutely.
Lazy has no place in a healthcare practice whatsoever. You don't want those people saying, ugh, now we got to see more patients. You want them to say, yes, I can't wait. Now I don't have to sit around, that type of thing. So we're measuring their motivation, and we do it across multiple different spectrums. But how do they want to contribute to their day? And there's some very specific numbers that we're looking for with regards to that. After motivation, we take a look at their personality, and we're looking for matches on things. Let's say for a secretarial position, their dependability, their cooperation. Are they a little bit open-minded or not? Most importantly, what's their stress tolerance? Are they going to show up each day wearing a helmet and a flak jacket and ready to go to war? That's terrific. In a healthcare environment, it's not. On the doctor's side of things, it's always a lot more pleasant than what we see in the front office. So after the personality, what we look for, next step is we're going to back out two components. We don't want volatility, and we also don't want neuroticism. So Ken, in your experience, have you ever had anybody join your team where it's a terrific fit when they're neurotic and volatile?
Never. No.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's such a leading question, but that's...
that reminds me of my first marriage.
Volatility and neuroticism on a team in healthcare, that gets back to those people that just don't contribute at all. So after that, we take a look at some very nuts and bolts questions, and our software does this automatically. We're looking for things like, can they work the hours that you're expecting them to? So for example, you need them to work till 7 on a Tuesday. The candidate can only work till 6. They have to pick up the kids. They have to do whatever. That's not going to work for you. So those people are backed out. we're taking a look at what their hourly wage range is. Maybe they want 12 to 14 bucks an hour, and you were going to offer 15. We would counsel you not to do that. Offer 13, save 4,000 bucks, and easily pay for our service in one shot. Another option that we ask the candidates, here's the expected driving distance to work. And this is so straightforward. If they're going to be driving 30 minutes in a rural area, well, guess what? It's 30 minutes to get anywhere, right? If they're going to be driving 30 minutes to go to a 13-minute or $13 an hour job in more of a metropolitan area, how many folks are they going to be driving by that might offer them 50 cents more an hour? That's what we want to avoid so that this person stays for a long time. We have a whole battery of questions like that. Past that point, when everybody gets to the near the end of the process, we do a video interview. So our team conducts a video interview asking them questions that are specific to the position. And what we're looking for is to gauge their responses. So I'll give you an example. If you're bringing on a receptionist position or something along those lines where they're going to be interacting with patients all day long, do you really want somebody who's going to be LOLing and OMGing everybody to death? Maybe not necessarily.
No, but it's prolific. I tell you what, it's prolific. I'm shocked at how many dental offices I've been into and chiropractic offices I've been in where, I'm there as the consultant and I'm watching and there are patients standing at the front desk waiting to check out or check in, and the person's over on their smartphone Snapchatting or Instagramming or holding, their camera up, taking photos or whatever for social media. It's just, it's shocking when I see that. It's just utterly shocking.
Right. And something else our team is looking for, amongst other things, on the video interview, how seriously are they taking this? Are they wearing a proverbial wife beater and shorts while they're doing their video interview? We've seen it. Are they dressed in a suit jacket, sitting at their dining room table? I mean, it doesn't matter necessarily where the location is, but how seriously are they taking it? How are they going to present to your patients at the practice? Those are the types of things we're looking for.
Absolutely. And so, guys, just one thing I want you to consider. Think about the fact that their automated system is going through finite details that in most instances, we just simply would neither have time to ask or we would forget to ask. And if we were to actually run through this in an interview, we would so fatigue ourselves and fatigue the interviewee, whether it's us who are doing the interview process or maybe our office manager or whoever's doing it. Having this automated is totally freeing you up. What's your time worth? If this takes an hour, which would be a joke, this is like 3 or 4 hours worth of work, literally 2-3 hours. They're doing it through automation. How much is your time worth? So, this to me is, I've seen the presentation. I've looked at the stats. Do me a favor, Dr. Mike. You told another story and you told some really good stories, but the one story that I did remember that really stuck out to me that I wanted to bring up was the one gal who applied to work in an office like 4 times and she was rejected because her resume wasn't put together well. And then she applied and went through your system, and then tell that story because that is that's gold.
This got us really excited and just fascinated. The dental hygienist. So pediatric practice, about 80 cases a day. The dentist is just running like crazy. She had an applicant with we'll call it a not great resume. Dental hygienist, everything's great with the person. She applied 3 separate times over the course of, I think it was about a year or so. And the dentist, who a terrific human being, reviewing the resume, nothing caught her eye. There's nothing in that resume that would have said, boy, let's move to the next level. So she ignored the person. On the 4th application, it was through the Build My Team process. We ran her through our entire process, and we went back to the dentist and we said, Doc, we really strongly want you to consider this person. Well, she's applied a whole bunch of times, etc. And we turned around and said, look, respectfully, if you don't hire this dental hygienist, we're going to hire her to run our internal dental team on the hygienist level. And she turned around, moved on her immediately, hired her. She also paid her more than she's ever paid a hygienist. And she told us a couple of weeks after the fact that she's the best hygienist she's ever hired. So here we are. This is the polar opposite end of the spectrum, where this person was just categorically ignored through no fault of either of them. What was broken in this process is the resume. When you're trying to bank on whether or not a person is great at what they do via their resume, that's where your decision making becomes flawed out of the gate.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Is there anything that I didn't ask you today that I should have asked you? Like, what's the process? Because I'm going to ask you before we get into, hey, how can people connect with you? If they want to look into this, what's the process? What did I not ask you? Because obviously I'm not a complete expert in this whole systematic process like you are. I'm familiar with it. I think I know more than most people, but still, I'm going to defer to your expertise. What did I not ask today that I should have?
I bring up a couple quick things. One, every position within healthcare that we move forward on is guaranteed. So anything that's looking for running through our system, like I said, it's all guaranteed, and the specifics are in the consultation that we set up. That would be the next thing. If anybody wants more information about this, go to buildmyteam.com. You'll see a prompt to schedule a consultation with one of our team members, and that's where we could find out more information about what it is that your practice is going through, and then make sure that we're a terrific fit to solve those problems for you. And then I think the other thing is just know that this entire company was created to solve one problem, and that's it. And we want to be the Olympic medalist of hiring rockstar team members for healthcare. That's all we're planning on doing.
That's awesome.
Our objective with this podcast is to help you and your business stand out in the marketplace by crystallizing your messaging, marketing, and communications. On behalf of the whole Ken Newhouse team, thanks for listening.